Welcome ladies and gentlemen, my name is Dychronic, your host here on this Destiny 2 video, and today we're going to be taking a look at my top 10 PvE specials in Destiny 2. And of course, as always, this is a completely subjective list based on my opinion of what I like to play, so obviously there are going to be some things that you may think I've overlooked, and if you do think that, please do let me know in the comments so I can make a better spreadsheet for next time. And of course, as always, I've made a spreadsheet for this video, including all the DPS calculations of all the different special weapons I considered for this video, which can obviously be found at my Discord server, link in the description down below, in the channel #SpreadsheetStocks. You can find all my spreadsheets and docs. And of course, keep in mind that DPS is not everything. The way I ranked all of these weapons, obviously on the sheet itself it is organized by DPS, but there are so many more things that come into play. You have DPS, you have total ammo damage, you have range, you have AoE, you have special utility, you have champion rounds. You know, there's so many different things that are so important when it comes to this game. So some things may feel like they're all over the place, but they have a very good reason. In this video, I'll be talking about those. And if you haven't heard already, I actually have another giveaway going on right now. Astra A10 headset, a Blue Yeti microphone, link in the description down below, and how to enter. And for those lucky few who actually did watch this part of the video, I wanted to say thank you. Some cute animals on screen right now. It really does help a lot when you guys watch all of this video. Increases the retention, increases the engagement, and it allows these videos to get out to more people. So if you do end up liking this video, share it with your friend. If you have somebody you play Destiny 2 with, send them this video or send them the spreadsheet. Moving on to the main section of the video, let's go ahead and take a deep dive into the spreadsheet. As you can see on screen right now, this is my spreadsheet and all of its beautiful goodness, dark theme, color-coded pictures, extra comments, information, how to get certain catalysts, what they do, information about my recommendations for legendary weapons, you know, tutorials on how to complete certain ritual quests and exotic quests. Everything I could possibly want to share with you is on this list for all the weapons I considered, as well as, obviously on the right, the DPS calculations, which not only tells you DPS, full ammo damage, and a lot of other nifty little things that I use for calculation. And let me tell you, there's a lot of things going on. Being able to adjust reload time into the RPM of a weapon, having a crit factor based on how often I think something will crit. Whether something can have a mod means that it can have major spec or boss spec on it. A lot of things go into this spreadsheet, and I really like to say this is the best version it ever has been, and it really is thanks to you guys supporting me by watching these videos and of course on Patreon. Because without your help, I wouldn't have the time, because this takes like 10-20 hours every week. So thank you to my patrons and thank you to my viewers. You really make this possible. And obviously I don't really do my top 10s like a lot of other people do. I'm not going to just go through the top 10. Instead, we're going to go through each class of weapon, for example snipers, and then go through each archetype of this weapon and then talk about how each thing fits in the meta and why certain things were chosen over other things. Up first, in the first major category, let's talk about the special ammo grenade launchers. And admittedly, I hadn't respected grenade launchers for a long time, but ever since I got Salvage or Salvo last season, we got Ignition Code this season, and of course the plethora of artifact mods of this season giving grenade launchers a boost with breach and clear, with ammo, with extra damage and returns. It's just incredible how much you can get on top of an unstoppable grenade launcher. Actually, there's just a lot of things to love about them, and I still think I'll love them next season because they're just such a nice weapon to use, and no matter what you're doing. Now obviously they don't have a lot of DPS. They're very low. They're pretty much the lowest of the game. However, they have a pretty respectful full ammo damage, very similar to that of shotguns, while having a much larger range, having the AoE explosion effect, and again, unstoppable rounds with the current artifact, making them even ideal for Grandmaster Nightfalls. On top of the fact that I mentioned constantly, Grandmaster Nightfalls, usually you're going to want to prefer total ammo damage weapons over that of DPS weapons, as long as that damage is safe. And something like Witherhoard, you can not only combine damage with that and another thing at the exact same time, has 1.3 million full ammo damage. And if you scroll all the way down on my spreadsheets, you can actually see a bunch of charts, and you can see that Witherhoard, it just doesn't have any competition when it comes to full ammo damage. It's just extremely high. And in my opinion, definitely deserving a number 2 and a number 6 slot for most of these grenade launchers outside of the wave frame, which I gotta be honest, I don't really respect the wave frame Deafening Whispered because it does much less DPS and it's more of a fodder killing enemy, and that's really what primary ammo weapons are for. Maybe you could argue that you could use Hawkmoon with Deafening Whisper, and then Deafening Whisper is more the fodder thing, and then Hawkmoon is more of the boss damage thing, but then you're getting weird with it. Up next, we have the Trace Rifles, of which there are 5 in the game, all of them exotic and all of them very unique. My personal favorite is going to be Divinity, the ability to weaken an enemy from a safe range, create a large crit bubble for Izanagi shots, and its overload rounds, meaning that it's very useful against champions, grandmasters, and raids, and pretty much anywhere in the game, makes it an ideal support weapon. However, that being the downside is that it's very boring to use because you're just letting your teammates kill everything. Beyond that, a lot of the other trace rifles are known for their total ammo damage at a safe range, some of them doing very unique things, albeit sometimes maybe a little bit dangerous. And then finally, Cold Heart, pretty decent DPS, pretty high full ammo damage. I think it's like second highest after Witherhoard, and definitely something that a lot of people are underrating. But they are still exotic, and I do have other options that I prefer. Up in the next category, we have these snipers. Now, these snipers are kind of all over the place. First of all, most of them are known for the lowest full ammo damage and some of the lowest DPS in the game. There are certain exceptions, namely Izanagi's Burden and Cloud Strike, which are actually at the top of the list. We're ignoring Borealis here because the double damage thing is kind of hard to get consistent. And admittedly, it does make sense. Snipers have a lot of range, making them very safe to use in the highest level activities, which is usually where you want to be. However, they don't feel good enough, and this is perhaps a bit more of a subjective take, but they don't feel good. Back in Shadowkeep, they felt good. Even outside of using Izanagi's Burden, they felt alright to use. And in my opinion, I think Bungie should rebuff the snipers close, if not back to the exact same levels that snipers were at Shadowkeep, but do not change Izanagi's Burden and Cloud Strike. And I don't think that snipers should be that insane. Again, they have a lot of range, making them a much safer option, but right now I'd rather use a grenade launcher, I'd rather use Ariana's Vow, I'd rather use a trace rifle. There's very few scenarios that I'd really want a sniper outside of, again, those two exotics. And the only reason we really used it last season is because sniper barrier rounds. Up in the next category, we have the fusion rifles. Now, the fusion rifles, in my opinion, are one of the most underrated weapon types in the entire game. Admittedly, I had not respected them for a while, and they used to be a lot worse than they are now, but most people would imagine the fusion rifles are less DPS, maybe easier to use, safer distance, and that's mostly true, but when you look at the spreadsheet, you can see that Merciless at max speed is top 5 DPS weapon entirely in the entire game for special weapons, and we also have some legendary versions, Cartesian, No Composure, up here with all of these shotguns that you think are the best DPS for DSC Raid Boss or Templar. Now, admittedly, these are here with a 0% crit, and these slug shotguns are at 80% crit, whereas on like a DSC Raid Boss, you have closer to a 100% crit. So I still don't think that they're going to be your DPS option, but they're definitely a lot safer while also maintaining a very respectful full ammo damage. And for some reason, the rapid fire frames have some of the best full ammo damage and DPS at the same time, especially with the new addition of the new ritual weapon, No Composure, with Reservoir Burst and high impact reserves. There's a lot of really great options for rapid fire frames. Outside of that, for the exotics, Jotun is really nice because you can peek in and out of cover at any range with the automatic aim assistance of it, with a big AoE explosion hitting many enemies with a pretty good full ammo damage. Telesto and Bastion are just kind of middling, but maybe more your preference. And finally, we have Merciless. Now, Merciless is somewhat close to being in the top 10. However, as you start to shoot, which by the way, they finally fixed it so it shoots faster, you're actually forcing yourself to sustain, which means you have to be out in the open for longer periods of time. And in the highest level play, you want to find weapons that don't require sustain, that allow you to go in and out of cover as much as possible. This is a main contributor to why I love hand cannons so much on the high level play. You can go in and out of cover while maintaining DPS. Because in the highest level play, you're trying to not die more than you are trying to kill. But overall, fusion rifles actually do the anti-sustain pretty well, because they can go in and out of cover and maintain that DPS while you're charging bursts. And so if you haven't really used fusion rifles in a while, I'd highly recommend trying them out again, because they're doing pretty well. Zabba zabap bap zabap. And in one of the final major categories, we have the shotguns. Now, everybody knows shotguns, they have shotguns, and there's a lot of frickin' shotguns in the game. They're very short range, they have very good DPS, very good burst, and pretty good full ammo damage. Now, I would say the only real argument against shotguns is that there's a lot of circumstances that swords are just as viable, but a lot better DPS, and of course, they're unsafe. In Grandmaster Nightfalls, you're gonna very rarely see a shotgun, but in everything else, Master Nightfall and down, you are very likely to see shotguns and do very well with them. One of the best examples I can give, even though we're talking about PvE, is gonna be Gambit. Being able to just remove blockers from your bank thing as fast as physically possible with a shotgun, as compared to some of the other options, is very useful. If you're fighting a bunch of majors on the field, you can end their lives extremely quickly with a shotgun before they can even deal damage to you. But as soon as you don't kill them with that initial burst, shotguns start to fall off quite sharply. When it comes to the legendary versions, the slug shotguns are doing the best when it comes to DPS, especially if you can guarantee 100% crit, as they have a higher crit modifier than most other shotguns. And following that, I also like the lightweight frames. A good combination of fire rate versus damage, works well with trench barrel. We have an energy option and a new kinetic option in the form of Reese Walker from Iron Banner. Just overall incredible weapons. The rest of the archetypes, the regular precisions, the rapid fires, the aggressives, are just not measuring up as much. However, I would remind you that the aggressive frames with trench barrel, like Imperial Decree that we used to have, will probably come back up on the charts whenever we get a kinetic aggressive frame with trench barrel. When it comes to the exotic options, a lot of you may be surprised that none of them are in the top 10. Lord of Wolves, Fourth Horseman, Duality, Chaperone, a lot of these are doing okay, but just don't measure up as much as some of these legendary versions, and again, are exotic. And usually you want to save that exotic for something a bit more effective in Grandmaster Nightfall or the highest level play. And the last context I'll give is going to be Fourth Horseman, Lord of Wolves. You have to be incredibly close to your enemies, and you know, swords do closer to 40,000 DPS instead of 24,000, so why don't you just use a sword if you're going to be that close? And Fourth Horseman, you really have to be that close. And finally, for the last major weapon category, we have the Ariana's Vow. A weapon in honestly a league of its own, which I don't think is highly contested as the #1 PvE special in the entire game, and honestly, I even claim that it's the #1 PvE weapon in the entire game relative to how amazing and useful it is to all the other weapons. So if you have not yet gotten the Ariana's Vow, I would highly recommend you beeline for it, because the sooner you get it, the sooner you can get working on its catalyst, which admittedly takes like 400 strikes or Crucible games, which is a lot, but definitely worth getting, both the catalyst and the weapon. If you've never heard of the weapon before, it ticks off all 5 of my criteria when it comes to grading this weapons. First of all, DPS, it has top 15 DPS in the game of 17,000. Secondly, for total ammo damage, it has 430,000 total ammo damage, which is top 10, top 15 in the game. Thirdly, it has sniper rifle level ranges, while also being very comfortable in close range, while also not having a massive crit modifier, meaning that it does pretty fine if you hit them in the body, which is something that snipers do suffer for. Fourthly, it has built-in barrier rounds, meaning that the utility in Grandmaster Nightfall is unparalleled compared to the fact that it's also a special ammo weapon, whereas a lot of the times the artifacts are surrounded around the primary weapons, where you're forced to take double primary loadouts. With special ammo weapons like Ariana's Vow, Divinity, and now Bastion, having built-in champion rounds is extremely nice, because you get the damage and you get the barrier rounds. And fifthly, the special perks, it has auto-loading plus a 50% larger magazine when you get the catalyst. And especially a weapon with champion rounds, you always want to have ammo on it, and you don't want to spend a ton of time doing nothing reloading. An example I always give is you break a champion's barrier shield, you shoot at him with your heavy weapon while your Ariana's is in your pocket. Whenever he's about to take his shield back up, your weapon will always have ammo in it, which means you will always be able to stop a barrier champion from healing in half a second. And that is going to be pretty much the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching all the way to this point. Obviously, we have cute animals on screen right now to just say thank you for watching, and I also want to give a big thank you to my patrons on Patreon. Truly, without my patrons on Patreon, I really wouldn't be able to make these spreadsheets, because they take 10 to 20 hours every single week that I could be spending on a part-time job, which, if you don't know, I don't make a lot of money from this, but I really like making spreadsheets. I like making YouTube videos, and the people on Patreon are making it possible for me to spend that time. And if you want to see this stuff continue, please consider checking out my Patreon in the description down below, because if only 0.01% of you gave $10 a month, I'd be able to make minimum wage, which, you know, fun fact, I don't. I make less than half a minimum wage. But again, I love doing what I'm doing, and I'm trying to make it work. Specifically, I want to give a big thank you to Medi Budu, Mom Dad, Dr. Strange, Joe Smith, Monday, Steve Bachmann, Raymond Schoner, Panther, Cole Sherman, and Casey Reagan for their support on Patreon, as well as all of my other patrons as well. And that's going to be pretty much the end of it. I hope you guys did enjoy, hope you guys did learn something, and I hope you guys did subscribe. My name's Dychronic, and I'll see you guys on the next one.